Hi, and welcome to the last section of Chapter 23 of the American Pageant for AP U.S. History, or dual enrollment college level U.S. History, or regular U.S. History. We're covering the politics of the Gilded Age. We're going to look at the Blaine-Cleveland election of 1884 all the way through the end of the chapter. So let's get right into it, talking about Grover Cleveland. Oh, man, here we go. So the Republicans, not happy, I guess, with maybe Arthur not helping the stalwarts and doing civil service reform, chose James G. Blaine as their presidential candidate in the election of 1884. He was dishonest. He wasn't a nice person. He kind of went against the backbone of the Republican Party, who believed in having good morals, and he drove a lot of Republicans away. The Democrats chose Grover Cleveland, who was a reformer. And he got the kind of the adage, or the quote, is Grover the Good. He's just a nice guy. Kind of a lie, kind of a shady guy. In fact, his name's not Grover. His name's Stephen. Stephen Grover Cleveland, who didn't like the name. So in elementary school or grade school, he went with his middle name. So, I mean, geez, he didn't even go by his real name. How honest can he be? He's actually a distant relative of the person that the city of Cleveland was named after, the mistake by the lake. He's one of the most unhealthy presidents we've ever had, second heaviest we've ever had, maybe third if we put President Trump on the scale. He's up there too. He weighed 275 pounds, which isn't the most. William Howard Taft was the heaviest president. Fitness magazine called Grover Cleveland the least healthy president in history because of all the beer he drank and cigars he smoked. Former teacher, got that going for him. And he also, we'll get into a little bit of the scandals here. So let's keep going here. He was a very honest and admirable man, but there was a scandal about an illegitimate kid. There was a child from an affair in 1874 that they claimed that this is Grover Cleveland's kid. Now, Cleveland addressed it head on and said it could be. It also might be his law partner. We're not sure. They didn't have Maury Povich back then. I guess they do a DNA test and prove it. But because of his straightforward confronting, his honest answers about the alleged affair, he was a bachelor at this time. People kind of thought he was still honest, even though this was kind of big news back then. He wins the election of 1884 in a very regional contest. You can see that, it's very north versus south, with the exception of some of the mid-Atlantic states, New York and Connecticut, New Jersey and Delaware and Maryland and, those places like that. So there's the political cartoon of Grover the Good and the little baby saying, I want my paw, and they're not really sure. So Grover Cleveland, old Grover takes over. It's funny they call him Old Grover. He was 47 when he was elected. He's not that old, but he looks like an old guy because he's super unhealthy. First Democrat elected to the presidency since James Buchanan. Yeah, he did such a wonderful job as president. The Democrats were not in office for 28 years. Good job, James Buchanan. Cleveland gets married 2 years into his presidency. He's the first president to ever get married in the White House. Second president to ever get married while he was in office, but he was married in the White House to a 21-year-old. He met her 2 years before. I think that her father worked with him. He's a law partner. And he basically married her at the age of 21, Frances Folsom. So he's 49 when he gets married, marries a 21-year-old. He's also the executor of her father's will, which is really strange. And he's also the first president to have children while in office. In fact, there was a baby Ruth, actually, born in in his first term. Eventually, he has 4 kids while he's in office. He believed strongly in laissez-faire economics, so basically the government should not regulate the economy. He replaced thousands of federal employees with Democrats, so supposedly we're supposed to have civil service reform, and here he is replacing people, the Republicans getting rid of them and putting in his own party. He promised reformers he wouldn't do that, but he's Grover the Good and he's honest. Cleveland believed that while the people support the government should not support the people. A little different there. He was also very fond of using vetoes. He was one of the most prolific vetoer in presidential history, vetoing bills left and right. And so he's just kind of a controversial guy. And we'll learn more a little about him in a second. So the Treasury was actually running a budget surplus. The economy was doing so well. The government had more money than it could spend, which is a rare thing. The last time it happened in this country was way back in 2000 with President Clinton. President Cleveland convinced Congress to lower the tariffs in 1887 to try to help consumers save some money, buy some cheaper goods. The Republicans opposed lowering the tariff because they thought it would hurt business in America. The burgeoning economy and our booming industry needed to have some help to compete with Britain and Germany, all of them. And so in the election of 1888, the Republicans choose Benjamin Harrison, who's the grandson of William Henry Harrison, the shortest term president in history, served all 31, 32 days, depending on how you count it. They made tariffs the issues of 1888, and Cleveland, even though he wins the popular vote, loses the Electoral College. So for the second time in less than a decade, 1876 and now 1888, the winner of the popular vote did not win the election, and so Cleveland is voted out of office, and we get Benjamin Harrison. And you can see this very regional. Once again, you can see the division of politics between Republicans and Democrats back then. So at this time, Congress really is what dominates government. The presidents are all pretty forgettable between Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt. They just kind of go with the flow. Congress is really who's in charge. The new Speaker of the House, the Republicans, a guy named Thomas B. Reed. He took control. He's pretty much a bully. He intimidated people to get what he wanted. And they called him the billion-dollar Congress because of the lavish spendings that they, did or passed through their laws. And so that surplus vanished just very quickly, much like, if you try to, craps and you've never played craps in Vegas and you just decided to bet on some dice, your money's going to go quickly. Just don't gamble. They gave pension to Civil War veterans. That ate up a huge chunk of it, a bigger pension of the surplus. It increased government purchases on silver, which helped a lot of silver mining towns, especially in Colorado and Montana, in Idaho, and places in the West. They also passed the McKinley Tariff of 1890, which significantly raised tariffs. It financially hurt farmers. Farmers felt like the whole deck was stacked against them. They were the ones left out. The tariffs hurt them. There wasn't enough protection for their goods, and so they were forced to buy expensive products and from American manufacturers or foreign manufacturers while they were selling their goods on a highly competitive markets. And so they felt like they were in trouble. The McKinley Tariff also caused the Republican Party to lose public support, to lose the majority of Congress in the congressional mid-year elections of 1890, and it leads to the formation of the Populist Party, partially, which is a precursor to the progressive movement of the early 20th century. And so the People's Party, the Populist, was formed when frustrated farmers and people from the agriculture belt of the West and the South got together and said, it's not fair. Banks are against us, railroad companies are against us, factories are against us, the government's against us. You have all these tariffs, and everyone's just sticking it to the agricultural sector of the country, the farmers. This new party called for a graduated income tax. The more money you make, the more income tax you should pay. Income tax was not around yet. Government ownership of railroads, telegraph, and telephone. These were so essential that the government should own and operate them. Somebody shouldn't make a profit over these vital industries that support the whole economy and the people of the United States. If you're wondering, yes, that's socialism. That idea has been around a long time in our country, the government controlling businesses and operating them. The government had a bank in the United States going back to the early 1800s, actually late 1700s. And so those are socialistic ideas. It's not new in the 21st century. They also wanted the direct election of senators. The people should have more of a say in who represents them in Congress. Instead of being appointed by the state government, the people should get to vote. They want more power to the people. They also want a one-term limit on the presidency, which if you had all these presidents in a row, Johnson, Grant, Hayes, Garfield, Arthur, Cleveland, Harrison, Cleveland, you would want one-term presidency. You probably want half a term, maybe a quarter term, maybe just, every month let's get a new president, because those guys just weren't doing their job. They also want the idea of the adoption of initiative and referendum, where people could initiate laws using their First Amendment right to petition the government for the redress of grievances. Also, referendum, the people could vote and approve certain bills or laws that were maybe controversial or didn't have public support, or if they did. They also wanted a shorter workday. I mean, who doesn't want a shorter workday? And they wanted immigration restrictions to kind of help their own people make the money they needed. They nominate James B. Weaver for the presidential election of 1892, which is also a rematch between President Benjamin Harrison and former President Grover Cleveland. And so kind of a big deal going on. And so kind of a neat thing going on. Oh, I didn't have it come out. I'm sorry. So in 1892, you also got a series of violent strikes. Workers are also upset, not just farmers, but workers, industrial workers, not being paid enough. They're having to work in factories in poor conditions. They're having to live in company towns. They have to use their paycheck to buy goods at the company store. And it's just really, the deck is stacked against them. The Populist Party did not win the election. There's a lot of violence. Some of the worst strikes in American history. The Homestead Act, which is extremely violent, occurred. One of the main reasons that the Populists didn't do well is they supported the black community, the African Americans, and they counted on votes in the South from the African Americans, which drove many people away because they didn't want to support African Americans. But with the South, with Reconstruction being over, African Americans were unable to vote. And so the Populist Party, or the People's Party, doesn't do as well as they'd like. But it's a precursor. They're kind of 20 years early. Those ideas we talked about are going to come back in the idea of progressivism, which crosses party platforms. It crosses the Democrats and the Republicans for people that want to help out the common man. So here's the electoral map of 1892. So in the showdown, in the rematch, Cleveland versus Harrison, Cleveland wins largely because of the populist candidate Weaver stole enough votes from the Republicans. You can see out west in Colorado and Kansas, Nevada, Idaho, and parts of Oregon and North Dakota, electoral votes went to Weaver, stealing Republican votes away from Harrison. If you went back to 1888, Harrison won those states, specifically Colorado and Kansas. And so Cleveland is back. Grover the Good is back, and Benjamin Harrison, grandson of William Henry Harrison, also great-grandson of Benjamin Harrison, same name, guy who signed the Declaration of Independence, one-term president, and he goes away. Here's your little videos. Remember I said check out those PBS 1-minute videos. They're really good. Here's kind of some farmer workers with the machines, and they're being displaced. Got some guys holding guns in Congress. I'm not sure what's going on there. Probably should have looked at the caption. And so Cleveland ran again for president. He beats out the Populists in the Republican Party. And then when he's inaugurated, there's the Panic of 1893, which was the worst economic depression of the entire century. Every 20 years or so in America in the 1800s, there was a depression. And every time it got a little bit worse. It was caused by overbuilding, overspeculation, agriculture depression. Really does a number out here in the West, hurting growth, specifically with silver mining towns like Aspen and Telluride. And even places like Leadville. 8,000 businesses failed in the first 6 months. And so Cleveland called Congress to halt the Sherman Silver Purchase Act to save the dwindling Treasury, which really just, like I said, threw a wrinkle or threw a monkey wrench into the silver mining boom out west, which in some communities like where we're at here in Newcastle, Colorado, they supported coal mining, which was used for smelting of the silver. So it hurts all these other towns surrounding the silver mines. William Jennings Bryan, the great orator from Nebraska, wonderful speaker, great speaker, gave dazzling speeches opposing this, and he becomes the voice of the West. And so Cleveland alienates the Democrats over money. He vetoes bill after bill. And his second term is it's just not really successful. But for some reason, they put him on the $1,000 bill. There are $1,000 bills out there that used to be used for banks to to communicate, or I guess communicate. Wow, I probably should stop talking soon. To transfer money, they used $1,000 bills back before electronic wiring like we have today. J.P. Morgan, the great banker that's behind the modern day Chase Bank, lent the government $65 million in gold to increase the Treasury Reserve so the government didn't go bankrupt. That's how elite and powerful men were back then. Individuals could give the government loans of gold to make sure the government didn't go under. It's remarkable. The Wilson-Gorman Tariff of 1894 lowered tariffs and added a 2% tax over $4,000, coming to the first income tax in American history. Supreme Court ruled that unconstitutional in 1895. It was going to take a constitutional amendment to do this, which is eventually the 16th Amendment. Might be the 17th, I can't remember. But that's going to be here in about 20 years. It caused the Democrats to lose seats in Congress, giving the Republicans a majority in Congress. And so basically what you have is, Grant, Hayes, Garfield, Arthur, Harrison, Cleveland. They're known as the forgettable presidents. And so we're moving on. Congratulations. Of the unit of the Gilded Age, you probably just survived probably the most dull, the most boring. You did it. You're awesome. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Thank you very much. Bye.